everybody. My name's Tracy Cooper and I'm from Sea Change Consulting, and I'm really excited to be a part of this conference. Thank you, Rebecca, for your invitation, and it's been wonderful working with you and the organising team. I'd like to introduce, and because we're together today, we're socially distancing, so I'm going to go stage right, and my business partner Maria is going to come in stage left. There she is.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you.
Okay, so we're here for 45 minutes, and it's a workshop that we'd like to get some little bit of interaction if you would like to engage with us. Before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of our land, and we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Particularly, I'd like to mention the Yuggera people from the land where I stand here in Brisbane. Our code of conduct for today, I guess just being a workshop, what we'd like to do is to welcome you to interact as much as you would like. We're going to have maybe the hands up function, and if you can see that across the bar on your screen, you're probably quite au fait with the system, the Microsoft Teams system. So the little hand, if I ask you if you think yes, that's me, put your hand up and we can see that. Maria's monitoring the chat. Also, there'll be times when we'll ask some questions, and we'd love it if you could put some comments in the chat because we can all learn from each other. Also, at times, if you'd like to come off mute, we'll suggest that as well to do that. So imagine if I asked you to place a bet. Some of you may or may not be betting people, but imagine if I asked you to place a bet that the world over the next 10 years is going to be radically different to that of the last 10 years. I've been using that slide for a while, but wow. It'll be more volatile, it's going to be more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. I guess you could say it's not a very risky bet, is it? But I guess what we're thinking about at the moment is change that's going all around us, and we're seeing great, massive change around the world right now through certain events. But what I'm also talking about is investing in new technology, which a lot of you work with, new ways of working, restructures in organisations. The change is going to continue to be happening. But I guess what I notice is that a lot of people say, oh yeah, things will change. But some people actually say, I don't think much will change. But they keep doing this. They keep operating with the same assumptions, the same beliefs and the same behaviours as if things weren't really happening. So if we're to survive, let alone thrive, we need to change. We need to adapt to what's going on around us in the greater world, but also in our workplaces. And we wanted to tailor this particular today to, I guess, in the Microsoft sense, is that a lot of the tools and the methods that are available to us about how we actually engage people to use some of those tools or the new systems that we use. So what we're going to talk about is how change management actually helps make change easier. That's our session topic, but it's helping people engage through the way that they think, the way they do their job, and the way they behave, so you can make the change stick. So change management, in my mind, is very much about a people focus. The change itself might be the system or the tool or whatever it is that we're changing, or the restructure, but the management of the change is around how we engage people in doing that. So we talk about every business needing to implement change, because if we don't change, we will become defunct or we won't be relevant. I firmly believe that, but it's hard and the risks are high when we change, because we invest time and money, but it's also very much, as I've just pointed out, a people game. So we're change specialists who support organisations to make those change happen. We're very much about focusing on the how we do it. How do we engage people to get this change happening? And many businesses are in the throes of disruptive change, even more now than ever. But we know they need to change, and this is what often people say to us. We know we need to see change, but how do we do that? How do we actually do it? What's the process? So I'm going to show you today. Maria and I are going to share some tips and tools as to how you can do that. Because organisations don't change, people do. It's the people within the organisations that do the changing. Now, I'm going to put some problems up here that we see with projects and change. And if you've seen any of these, I'd love you to put your hand up in the chat function. So projects going over time, sticking to the schedule, budgets, etc. Managers and supervisors who resist, we see that often. I feel sorry at times for managers and supervisors. They can be in the middle, or the meat in the sandwich. The change comes from the top, but they're resisting it. People tell you they're on board. Yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm going to go along with this change, but they're not. They white ant things, and people won't engage in the new way because it's just the projects and the things that we've done. The legacy around here isn't good. Are we getting any hands up, Marie?
Yes.
We are. We've
6.
seen people. We've got 6 hands up. Thank you. Thank you. So that's what we've seen, and I know, thank you through your hands that you're seeing it. So what we talk about is every project is a change and every change is a project. If you think of it like that, projects that you're, new systems you're working on, implementing, websites you're putting in, whatever it is that you're doing, we see it, if it's a project, there's change involved. But if it's a change for the business, look at it like a project. So that's the marriage between change management and project management. But what it's about for us is how do we create change that sticks? Because we invest time and energy and effort. We need to make sure it sticks and it's not a waste of time. So how do you do that? Well, I've alluded to this, but it's taking the challenge of thinking that you can get every single person in the organisation to change. And how you do that is impacting the way that they think, do their jobs and behave. Some people are a little bit defeatist and say, there's no way, Tracy, you won't get everybody. Well, I like to think we can with some of the tools and techniques that we use. So types of change, I've touched on a couple. So there's some there. And I guess, top right-hand corner, now we're moving into this phase of new ways of working because of what our whole experience through COVID-19 and this change is coming. And that's been a huge event and a really stressful event for many, many people, but there are some potential opportunities coming from that. But that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about types of change. And across the bottom there, anything where the future state needs to be different. So why bother changing? Why don't we just stay as we are? Well, I think many of you could probably give me some answers on that, but I see it's this. It's to get better results for your customer and your customer's customer, and as well as your business and your people. So it's all about people, but it's about potentially really focusing on customer and their customer. It's about everybody winning through this process. And change, in our mind, change management is not enforcing it. It's about how people can win through this. Speaking of winning, I've actually got the competition slide there now. So if you'd like to grab your phones and take a picture of the code there and enter in the competition. Great prizes and well done to the organisers for those prizes.
So what I'd like to ask you about now is what you think the impact is when change is managed poorly. So if you'd just like to go into the chat, see if you can add anything there that you think is the impact. So what have you seen in the past when change is managed poorly? What sort of impacts are there on the business, on individuals, on teams, anything with that regard?
Okay, we've got poor take-up.
So we have poor take-up.
Disengagement, attitude is negative.
Yes.
Wasted money.
Very true, very much so.
Thanks, Rebecca. Staff morale, Nicola, thank you.
So what we often see is that the impact is rarely monitored around the people, and also rarely, I guess, monitored around the numbers. So what we're trying to help people to do often is to see what is the impact, because if people don't see that there's a negative impact, if you manage it poorly, they'll keep doing what they've always done. So thank you for your ideas. We don't have anything majorly new. Obviously, you'll get rework. There'll be a loss of time spent doing that rework in particular. There'll be confusion and stress for the team. There'll be non-compliance. So particularly in worlds where compliance is a big component of their work, you'll have audit failures. You'll have customer complaints, which obviously cost the business money, loss of customer contacts, and more so, which is majorly costly as well. But it is the point about having so many people so negatively impacted at time. It is about their happiness and their morale as well, which some of you have mentioned.
I've just got one here. Thank you, Don, for yours. We're going to be touching on this, low morale. and not understand the reason for the change. That is huge, the why. So thank you for that one. We'll touch on that one shortly.
Yes. So we all know the stories and we all know the impact of change being managed poorly. So the big question that Tracy and I are always focused on whenever we go into any business, because businesses are unique, however, they have some common characteristics. So why does this keep happening? So what I'd like you to do now, just in the chat, is why do you think change is often managed poorly?
Yes, focus on delivery only. I love it. Jade, yes. It takes too much time. Yep. Planning, fear of the new. Yeah, these are great comments.
Thank you, because that is so very true, that we see a lot of it is about planning and people's desire not to spend time planning, and particularly we see here in Australia, part of our culture is we've got to be doing things rather than planning things. It's seen as we're not doing anything when in fact we are.
Andrea, your comment around the focus is on the technology and not the people, spot on. We see that often. We get called in when I think it's a bit too late, to be honest. So
thank you. And we are speaking obviously to the converted. You know, you've been there, you've seen it. So the biggest mistakes we see there's a top 4 for us that we come across, that people don't have, or a business doesn't have a proper process or methodology to get them from A to B. And I should say, when I say proper, they probably don't even have one to transition their people through the change. So often people just think, this is what we're doing today, and now tomorrow this is how it's going to be, and they expect people to go from here to there in one swift movement. They don't have a structured way to communicate with their people and deal with their resistance along the way. Resistance is very, very common, and it is normal in any change. And so communication is vital, but it's not the only piece. Unfortunately, change management is often perceived as just comms, and it's so much more than that. And the ability to predict resistance, because it's normal. If you're going to tell me to go and do something and I don't see the reason for it, or I don't see the value in it, I'm going to resist. They don't realise how imperative that the leaders of the change are visible and present throughout the entire process. I don't know whether you've ever seen that. You might have seen it at a town hall, or the big announcement of the launch of the change by perhaps the CEO or an executive, and then you never see or hear from them again. So people start to go, well, why was that so important to do that, but now we don't see them anymore? And as some of you have mentioned there, we don't resource the people side of change. So we work with a lot of project managers and talk with them about where's the component for the people and getting them through this process, not about just delivering on the project. And the overarching mistake, which some of you have already picked up on, most change projects focus on the change itself and not the people that make that change happen. So you've got to have both. You've got to be clear on what the focus of the project is and the scope, what's in and out of scope. But just as importantly, we need a plan for how we're going to help the people make the change happen. And it becomes really hard change because we fail to consider the impact of the change on your people and the need to engage them in it to make it work. And people are hard, people are different, people are diverse, people have different wants and needs. And just when you think you've got somebody on board, next day they come and they're off board again, and you've got to go back and rethink how you're going to get them back on board again. It is quite simple, but it is not easy. And this is something that I've thought about for a while now, and I said to Tracy a few months ago, I think for me change happens best and lasts longest when it's been a choice and not forced. And you might think, oh, you know, that's no big light bulb, but it was quite a light bulb for me, because when we can get people to choose to come with us, then it lasts a really long time. If you force, it will only be in place, if at all, very in short term, and long term the change is never apparent again. It's just another thing on the pile that didn't work. So it's actually about changing the culture to get change to work. So the way we do things around here is our definition of culture, and it's the only way change will stick. So for it to be reinforced over time, it needs to become a habit, and we need to make sure that we're ensuring those habits stay in place. But of course, risk is inevitable with any change. When things go wrong in changing times, it creates stress and pain for people, and projects go over time and over budget. So Tracy's now going to speak about how change management actually makes that process for a project success a little bit easier in terms of how to roll it out.
Okay, so I'm back. So I guess going back to our slide where we started, we've given some context here, I guess, and thanks for your comments, because you're saying things that we see all the time. So this session is all about how change management makes change easier. And we thought the best way to help you, I guess, think through this is to talk about the mistakes to avoid. I often relate to things when I say, this is what you don't do. Obviously, you can turn it to the flip side as well of what you can do. Now, I actually also have a free guide for you. It's a wonderful action-packed guide, a PDF that will attach to the chat at the end of this meeting. So if you can just hang on at the end, I will go in and attach it. But that's for you. It captures a lot of what we're saying here in this particular part of the session. So what I like to do, you can see down the bottom in the right-hand corner, we are ProSci accredited practitioners, change specialists, which is in a model that we had to study for and become accredited in. And I'd like to acknowledge one of their tools today, which is ADCAR, and I'm going to walk through it in a sense of these mistakes that people make. So there are 5 of them, and you can see there, number 1 is awareness through to desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And that is the acronym. The acronym ADCAR comes from that. So A for awareness is obviously the first one. So the first mistake that people make, and we see, and some of you've touched on this already in your comments, is the failure to build awareness about why this is happening. So if people don't understand the change or why we're doing it, there's an increased likelihood they're going to oppose it. Simple as that. Simple as that. You think about yourself. If you don't understand something or why you should do it, are you going to jump on board? I don't think so. I don't. I ask lots of questions if it's not being provided for me. So what we can see here down the left-hand side are the mistakes. So people don't explain the why. They don't explain what's going on. They assume. Leaders in organisations, I'm not beating up on you, but they tend to just, because I've said it once and I've sent an email, you must get it, right? It's not the case. Not everyone reads email. So it's about the communication of that people may not know what's going on. I guess this is about the benefits and talking through why this has to happen. And I guess too, what I see is in communication is strongly linked to change management. So it's so important that you actually say it over and over and over again. You know, don't take the attitude, I've said it once. So you can see there, those 4 questions actually on the right-hand side, building awareness, they are my favourite, and I use them all the time when working with clients in the very early stages of a project. It's a basis of a comms plan, but it's also your very initial early communication, whether it be website, whether it be through Yammer, whether it be through email, whether it be through town hall meetings, all of those mediums. Why are we changing? What are the benefits? Why now? And what happens if we don't? I love the what happens if we don't, because it creates that sense of urgency and that burning platform that we've got to do something here. We really need to move ahead. It creates that urgency. And the last bit there is keep telling people how you'll keep them informed. That's really important. So that's the awareness piece. So the second part of ADCAR, the D, is failure to build desire. So once you've got people aware, so they go, okay, I get it, why we're doing it. Doesn't mean they like it, but it can actually increase their awareness and they gain that understanding. We move on to then desire. So your job, if you're the change leader and or working on the project, is to make sure that we get the desire right, because this is where the resistance is really strong. Resistance really stuffs up projects. It will actually halt things. It will make things go over time. It will make things go over budget. So with our title of our session, it's important that if you follow this, it will make it easier for you. So how do you build desire? Well, you can see the mistakes down the left-hand side. And this is all about rushing through and not really caring, not listening. I'm on the bandwagon at the moment. I know Oscar Trimboli spoke earlier and Oscar was on the call right now. It's all about listening. We need to take the time to listen to where the resistance is and what's going on for people. And when people label other people, oh, they're a resistor, I see it all the time. When I go into organise, oh, they're a resistor, stay away from them. It's like they're resisting for a reason. So it's important that we go and talk to them, particularly leaders, spend that one-on-one time with them. So you can see down the right-hand side, it's talk to people. We have these one-on-one conversations. Don't cancel those one-on-ones. It's so important to ask the questions. Are you with me? Do you support this? Do you have some resistance? I'd say it exactly like that. Ask the question. What's in it for me? The old WIFM. So as a person working in change, ask your resistor if they can see anything in it for them, because often they can't. Often they can't. So it's really about, Maria uses this phrase all the time, the last point there, investigate with people. Don't interrogate them. Don't force them. Don't tell them. And if you listen and deeply listen, you actually might pick up something that you weren't aware of, or a really, really valid point that your potential resistor can help you to find solutions. I'm now going to hand over to Maria, and she's going to walk you through the last three.
So once you've identified that where people's desire is at, it is important that before you go to the next critical stage, that you've got their desire to a level that's relatively high, that they want to go and learn some more. So the mistake at this point is the failure to build knowledge. And what we say here is if people don't know how to change, they'll ignore it. So the biggest mistake here around knowledge is training. So how often when a project's rolled out, say it's new software, for instance, we don't actually put enough time into how are we going to actually train people in this. So often we don't provide training at all. We just tell people what to do. We provide a standardised training program if, in fact, we do that. We provide boring training. And I'm a big person about commenting on that. I used to be a teacher, and I think the learning environment is so vitally important when you're trying to teach people new things and new ways of doing things. And we don't sometimes check if people actually understood what they've learnt. So you can see if people turn up to training and they haven't had high levels of awareness and desire, you may have been through it yourself, you get to the training and you're not interested at all. And then sometimes we blame the training. And in actual fact, the problem is we don't have desire before we get to the training. So how do we avoid this mistake? We get the timing right, we get the content right, we get the process right, and we make it very personal, meaning we tailor it. So if I'm bringing in some software and there's specific parts of it that affect me in my role, I'm going to make sure I spend a bit more time on that because they're really key to you as the person who's going to be using that quite a bit. So once we've got knowledge in place, it doesn't stop there. The next failure we see is to build ability. So what we often say is I can know how to ride a bike, but when I get on it, I don't have the ability. So if people don't have the ability to change, they'll fail at it. So the common mistakes here, when you go to training and you come back, we don't make any time for people to practice. We actually don't make any time for people to make mistakes. So they don't know how to actually do it when they're sitting at their desk or they're out in the field and they're using this new change. We don't check if they can do it. So we assume when they leave the training that they're going to just miraculously have the ability. We can expect that they can do it because you went to training. So you must know how to do it. And we've all been to training that's very poor. And so regardless of the fact that we went there, we didn't really learn anything. And we're not supporting people through the learning and continuous improvement process. And for some people that we work with, they haven't been through the learning process since they were at school. And that learning process was very, very heart-wrenching and devastating for them. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. So we have all those barriers that we need to deal with as well. So avoiding it is give them practice, coach them. As the leaders of your team, you need to be able to teach them how to do the things that they maybe didn't learn in the training. Don't expect them to know everything too soon. Don't berate them when they make a mistake. Allow mistakes. That's the best way to learn, and it's the best way to figure out what piece of the puzzle they're missing and assess their progress and retrain if you need to. So it's like we better go back over that again. So it's very, very important that you make sure they have the ability and you stick with people to build that ability so that they then can go to the final stage that we see doesn't happen. So I've got the ability, but we don't reinforce it. So if people don't see change reinforced, they'll revert back to old ways. And this is big in projects because people show a sign that they've got it and then we don't do any of that. We allow people to go back to old ways. So we have a client currently and they're going to electronic timesheets. And so within the first week of the rollout, some guys and girls are already saying, oh no, I'm going to still do the paper-based version, and nobody is stopping them from doing it. There's no consequence for failing to change. They're not recognising anyone who's doing the right thing. That's another, detractor. The people who are actually doing the right thing don't get noticed or don't get recognised. And we're not measuring the positive impact, because that's what helps people keep going. They go, oh, when I used that, that was 10 times quicker. Or now I can produce this and I couldn't produce this before. So as a leader in times of change, we avoid this by walking the floor, provide the coaching for the resistors who want to go back to the old way. It's a very normal human response when there's a change in place. Recognise those who do. Provide consequences for those who don't. And I don't mean a big stick. I mean a conversation about what's going on here. Why is this happening? What can I do to help you? And also some timeframes of, how are we going to get you up to speed to use this in the time frame, and measure the positive impact and communicate that to people. So as I said, timeframes that are much faster now, things we could do that we couldn't do before. So you can see in summary, there are the 5 mistakes: failure to build awareness, failure to build desire, failure to build knowledge, failure to build ability, and failure to reinforce. So what I would really appreciate if you could do now is just put into the chat, which mistake does your business make most often? So out of those 5, or if you don't have a business, it could be just your experience of the mistake. Is it a lack of awareness, a lack of desire, knowledge, ability, or reinforcement? So if you could just pop one of those in, that would be really handy.
Okay, we've got desire and ability, reinforcement, desire. We've got a mixture. Thank you, Emma. Nicola, you're back at awareness.
Yeah, so very important about the need to explain why. People assume people know why. So a little tip there is, when people are lacking awareness, or you want to check if they've got awareness, don't just ask them, do you know why we're doing this? Because people will inevitably say yes. The better question is to perhaps ask, so why do you think we're doing this? What do you think the point of this is? So you get them talking to you and you go, okay, so they got that bit, but they didn't get that bit. And so then you can reinforce that message in another way.
Yeah, we've got quite a few desires, actually, and yeah, thanks, Nicola. Feeling like management are pushing us too quickly, yes. And to me, I would think if they're pushing too quickly, the awareness and the desire is not there.
Yes, and I think the desire one is a really key one. That just a tip on that. Don't assume because people have a desire, they have awareness. So that happens in a circumstance where if I'm using something, say it is software, and I really dislike what we've got at the moment, my desire for change is going to be high. But that doesn't mean I know why we're moving to this particular part or this particular style or product of software that we're going to. So just because people have got desire, don't think they're ready for knowledge, because it will soon become very apparent when they're in training that they don't understand why, and then they'll start to resist, which will become really, really difficult. Would anyone like to come off mute and give us an example of a mistake that you've seen made around awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, or reinforcement?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to share.
Nicola, is it Nicola?
Yes.
Hi,
yes.
Nicola.
Hello, Nicola. Yes,
Hi.
love, please share.
This is the second agency that I'm working in where I'm having to rebuild the intranet. And this time I decided, no, we're going to see what the user stories are. Let's get back to what it is what is your problem? You know, we're about solving, we're using technology to solve your issue. But again, I feel like the managers and everyone that I'm working with are going, hey, I've seen this really cool website and I've seen this awesome intranet and we can do this and we can do that. And I'm trying to bring them back to, we need to know what we're solving. I said, we need to have a solution for a problem, because we can do all the pretty things that you've seen before, but for what if people are not going to find it valuable? And so this is the second time that we're going to be doing a lot of work on a rebuild of an intranet that I'm feeling a bit deja vu about.
Thank you so much, Nicola. I can absolutely, Tracy and I have seen that many, many times. It's when they purchase the new, maybe it's the intranet and the new product, and people go, why have we got this? You know, I use this every day, and what we had before did it better than what this one does. So it is a very common problem that we see. You're coming from a consultative, collaborative approach, and sometimes that's not where leadership is coming from, sadly. It's about getting, you know, the latest or the fanciest thing in, or doing something that's different to everybody else, rather than, as you say, let's start with the problems we've got and then work out what we need to solve that problem after it. And I guess you're also talking about listening to people, because when people feel included right from the very beginning, and that's before we've decided what the solution is, and I think that's right, the project is the solution. But what's happened before that, and we often get caught up in that, we're in the middle of, you know, doing desire, and people going, why did we choose this in the first place? So there's no awareness as to why we did, and therefore it goes back to, well, what did they sell you, and why did you buy that? And that's been an interesting journey, because it's like, well, I don't really remember. You know, they did a really good sales pitch, but I don't really know what problem we took to them and what solution they're giving us to fix that problem. So thank you, Nicola. Great point. And it's really frustrating. I know. I appreciate how frustrating it is.
Has anyone else got any ideas to support what Nicola's saying, or something they've tried? Nope. Actually, I was just looking at one of the chats here. I think it's you, Jade. I think when you said running one training session and sending 2 comms and wondering why people don't take it up. So I'm assuming you mean we just do the training session once, we send a couple of comms, and then people wonder why people aren't taking it up. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. Yes. Well, Jane, no wonder, because it's that whole, you know, some of the reading and understanding I have, we have to do it about 7 times for people to hear that communication piece. I often have leaders say to me, but Tracy, I don't understand why they don't get it, because the particular leader or the person who's very passionate about the change, it's been in their head for a while. They've worked it through. They've got it clear. But they think because they've said it once, everyone's on the same page as them. It's that assumption stuff again. So, yeah, it's a really great point, Jade. And you have to keep saying it, and saying it in different ways and different mediums, meetings, verbally, written, etc. Great, thank you. And I guess one last thing with those, this is in the handout that we'll put in the chat, but when you look at that, if you're finding that when on a project, I would look at where you're having trouble. Like if I can't get people to come on the bus, or I can't get people to come with us, you might think, well, I think it's desire. Pinpoint where your problem is. And then I'd go to the one before it, because maybe that needs more work. So, for example, with desire, if you think people they don't really want this, go back to awareness, go backwards in the steps, because that is where potentially your bottleneck has come from. You haven't raised enough awareness, or you haven't identified and had those good conversations with resistor. This is where listening comes in so importantly, that we need to listen. So, yeah, just you can go backwards. It's not just a lovely linear flow. So as I said, this is the ADCAR model that we utilise. It's only one of the tools that we utilise when we work on change projects, but it's a very powerful one, and it's a good one to remember because of the acronym. But it's about, and you can ADCAR anything. I ADCAR stuff at home, family members, etc., etc. So it's about have I given them enough awareness? Are they on board with me, etc.? So think about how you can use ADCAR in any change, in your personal life, in your family life, around this COVID stuff, what's going on at home. So as we start to draw to the end of our workshop, I've got a few more slides, and then we'll open it up for any more questions. I guess what often people say to me, I'm seeing change though, I'm seeing it improve, but some leaders will say, we don't have time to do this change people stuff. Well, have you got time for those things, those impacts that are on the screen? I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure you do. And I think the really important part here is to think about the impact that poor change management does have on your people. Because if you don't have that time, you can lose staff. And I think it's really, I made a post on LinkedIn last weekend actually and connected this to what's going on and change to Global Mental Health Awareness Week. And I'm quite passionate about the fact that as leaders in change leadership, we have a role to support and listen to our people to help them, because it really does affect people. It's wrong. It's wrong that we don't actually listen and actually help people through change, and we just force and push. It's not right. It's not the right way to help people through, let alone the right thing to do for people. So our conclusion from today, I guess what we've just talked about here, we've possibly made it sound easy. It's not easy. Change isn't easy, and people are complex beings. So I guess it's learning from doing, having a go, trying something, sit back and reflect and go, well, did that work? I'm not sure if it did, or this is might work. So you actually draw some learning. So it's not easy, but change is inevitable, and I guess it is hard. But I think if you can get a change culture in your organisation and some commitment to how we actually involve people and include people in this process, you're going to get through it quicker. Definitely going to get through it quicker. The old ways of forcing and telling, and you must change, we know don't work. We don't, and it costs a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. And we've been helping people do this for 19 years. So I guess our experience, it's about navigating change. We've got a boat to steer, and every change project's different, but you will be learning things and have gained things from different ones that you've worked on. But I guess for me, it's all about how you can make that change happen. So my last couple of slides, this is one of my favourites. If you change nothing, nothing will change. So in your organisation, in the ways that you approach change, you'll still keep getting the same results. So I think it's really important that if you've listened and picked up some ideas in this workshop, is try a different tack. Try something different with how you're approaching your change or to engage people, and maybe focus on yourself a little bit, because we can't change other people, but it's about if we don't change anything, nothing will change. And I'm talking probably there in your approach to change. I like this one. Expecting things to change without putting in the effort is like waiting for a ship at the airport. It's not going to happen. So change does take effort, and it does take planning, and it does take reflecting and thinking. So we would like to thank you very much for joining our workshop. We'd love you to stay connected with us. I put a lot of stuff on LinkedIn and sharing stuff about change, and I'd love to connect with you. So I'd invite you to do that with both of us. I've also want to hang on there, keep the meeting open. I'll put the free guide in so you can actually have a resource for you. That's our gift to you for coming to our session. And of course, we would like to thank the sponsors. Thank you very much. Look at the wonderful sponsors we've had for this conference to make it happen over the month of May. Questions? Yes, so we actually have 5 minutes. We've planned it that we would have 5 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question around how to make change easier, or anything that we've said. Put this slide back up. You can either ask it in the chat, or you can come off mute.
So we have a question from Craig. How do you get the CXOs on board with change?
Craig, that's a good question. That's a good question. Before I answer it, has anyone else got any ideas? How can you get the CXO on board with change?
gunpoint.
Maria's got an idea. I'll step aside. I've got one too.
So, Craig, I'm thinking use AdCut. So use the same process and work with them first. So point being that it's about raising their awareness about whatever the change is as well, and make sure or ask them what their awareness is, their desire, their knowledge, their ability, and get reinforcement there, and as early as you can get it. And it's about having the conversation with them, I guess, and understanding their perspective, because we find in some of our projects the CXO are not on board. It's somebody's idea, maybe one of the CXO, and the others really don't understand anything about it. So that piece around making sure their awareness and desire is high at the start is really, really critical. And it's not easy. It is not easy because it depends how well that CXO works together, because they can often be competing against each other, which makes raising awareness and desire quite difficult.
Yeah, Craig, what I would say is similar to what Maria has said, but I would think about change is a game of potentially communication, and there's a bit of politics at times. So we talk about in your project that you would have an executive sponsor behind you. So you might be doing a lot of the lead work, or I'm not sure of your role, but an executive sponsor is often a very senior person who sits on a CXO, and utilise your executive sponsor to help them have a peer-to-peer conversation with maybe some resistance of some of the CXO in there. Now, I don't blame CXO, because they often have the members of it. They have so many things going on, lots of projects, they've got their own motivators. I guess it's utilising your connection or your sponsor to actually have that conversation, and or if you feel comfortable yourself, having the time to sit with them and understand their resistance. Because often, like, I fully believe people want to be heard. They love to be listened to. So listen to what any resistance, if there is any, from the CXO. Show that you're ready to listen, because you might find something out that is pretty relevant.
And I like Don's comment, illustrate the impact on the customer if we don't get the change right, because obviously it's so much about the customer. And if you're a consultant particularly, it's about knowing what the customer's customer wants and focusing on that as a key driver. So that's great. Work out what's important to them, what's in it for them.
And I think linking it to, what problems could this solve for them as well, as Maria's saying, what problems could it solve for the CXO in relation to customers, and or I guess how it could be viewed in the eyes of customers. Definitely.
Thanks for your question, Craig.
Any other questions?
Nicola is asking, what if the resistance is more apathy?
Yeah, the old white ant, and or apathy, which can be, I just can't be bothered, so to speak.
Yeah, and Nicola, we work a lot about change baggage. We call it change baggage. So it's about digging down to why are people apathetic. Again, what's happened in the past that makes them feel like, here we go again, which is what we hear. Why is this any different? It hasn't happened before. So again, instigating those conversations, because apathy comes from somewhere, and it's trying to work out where that's coming from, and can we do something to adjust that mindset? Is that person ready to change that? Do they want to get on board? What would need to happen for them to get on board? And often the apathy is, I don't see any benefit for me. So the good old whiffum, trying to find a benefit for them to get them to have desire, because, resistance comes in many forms, and apathy is a symptom of something deeper, we often find.
Yeah, Nicola, I would also add the burning platform. So I know that's a change management phrase, but really, what's the sense of urgency around this? Sometimes it's really hard to try and, I guess, tie a whiffum for an individual. it can be like, oh gosh, I can't see a benefit here for this particular person. But what I can see is a wider, if we don't do this in this business, back to those awareness questions, if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And actually, you know, we could lose key customers, we could get eaten alive by the competitors, whatever. So it's about not just the individual moving with what will affect them, but us as a business, which means if we're not succeeding as a business, that could affect some of us individually. So I would go back to your awareness questions and conversations around, and I would, again, dig around. I wonder why they are apathetic. Yeah. Okay, well, that is bang on, or just 1 minute over, 45 minutes. So I will now put the free guide into the chat. But thank you all so very much for joining us today. And we love talking to people and talking about change, if you can probably tell. So if you connect with us on LinkedIn, send us an email. We would love to talk further and really hear your stories around change, because, you know, there's not a one answer here. Every situation is different. Thank you. Have a great Friday, and well done again to the organisers of May 365.